gosh, Courtney, or shall I say Dr. Courtney, there is a richness and a depth to your professional background. I'm going to let you dive into all of that. But you have a doctorate in nursing. You are a high level or high conflict. Hold on. You say it. You say it better.
High conflict divorce coach and co-parenting specialist. It's a mouthful.
It is. It is. And I'm looking at my notes and I still can't say it right. And you have coined the term, what is it? Parallel parenting?
I didn't coin the term. Actually, his name is Carl Knickerbocker, I believe is how you say it. He's an attorney, wrote a book. It's on Amazon, 12 books. Please go buy it. It's great. And I have my copy, like I'm looking at it. I use it in my parenting journey since divorce. So I'm just a firm advocate for parallel parenting. So I didn't coin the phrase, although I wish I did. But
it's so good. And I'm going to make a note so that we can like dive into the difference of parallel parenting and co-parenting, because I'm sure that there's a difference. Okay, but not yet. I heard through the grapevine that you're also getting your MBA right now.
I am.
And there may or may not be a book coming out soon.
Yes. It's projected for next year, early next year. I have a meeting with a publisher next week. The manuscript itself is done, but obviously there's tweaking and probably lots of things I don't even know that are involved in this process, but fingers crossed.
Are you comfortable sharing the title of the book? Is it a working title or is it the actual title?
I don't want to stray too far from the title, so I won't say it's etched in stone, but I'd like to say somewhere close to it. So it is From Hell to Healing, Your Guide to Surviving a High Conflict Divorce. So, yeah, I'm not getting away from the hell to healing part, but I'll obviously...
That's powerful. Like that needs to go on a t-shirt, honestly. You could have some merch
with it, a hat, a cup.
Some merch. All right. So I like to address the elephant in the room. And I know leading up to our chat today, you expressed a lot of excitement.
Absolutely.
And also some hesitation. And in true Sharon fashion, I'm going to bring that shit to the table.
Yeah.
So I think not only will it be beneficial for our chat moving forward so that you can be fully yourself and transparent and authentic, I think it's also going to be helpful for our listeners to see how difficult it can be to put yourself on the stage at any size, any level.
Absolutely.
This is difficult. Yeah. You're taking a microphone and you're bearing your story, parts of your story to the world to be judged and perceived. So I want to know, what were some of the thoughts and emotions that were coming up for you leading up to today's chat?
Girl, you have opened Pandora's box on that one. So many things flooded with this. Yes, excitement, obviously. I'm very passionate about what I do, so excitement was the leader. But I mean, I gotta say, it was fear. It's fear of judgment. So on the internet, you can portray one thing, you can really portray anything you want. But there are people who know you IRL. So, they know your scars, they know your wounds, they know different versions of you, things like that. And people judge those different versions of people. And I would be lying if I said there aren't things in my past that deserve absolute judgment. And that's.
Yeah, I'm going to interject. I'm already going to, you know how I am. I would go on to say that they might also deserve a little grace.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
I like that. I struggle with that. So, even in my business helping clients, when I say to them, give yourself grace, that little voice inside of me was like, oh, that's rich coming from you. You can't even give yourself
that's
grace. Rich. Girl, get off that pedestal. And I do. I have full transparency with my clients. I tell them all the time, like, I have not perfected this in any way. But the one thing that I have tried to do is make amends for the things that I own, that I did. And that may not look like where I've gone to, someone in high school that I hurt their feelings or, whatever, and been like, I'm really sorry. Because who's going to do that, 20, 25 years later and unearth things? But I've really, over the last, probably I'd say 5 to 10 years, started to really take stock in ownership of the things that have made me the versions that I used to be. Um,
Mm, yeah.
from childhood to teenage years to marriage, just, and then, a broken marriage. I've really tried to take stock in my part in that, because I would be really just, I would be laughed out of here, and I'd laugh myself out of here if I was like, oh, I'm perfect. I didn't have anything to do with any of that.
Yeah.
And I've really tried to shift over the last 5 years my mindset, because I could sit here and say everybody could. I had a crappy childhood. This happened, that happened. Those are my reasons or my excuses. But if there's no excuse, you choose how you act, you choose how you show up, and you choose what you own. Um, so that was the fear of putting myself out there. And like I said, there are people who know me in real life, people who will hear this, people hear the other podcasts that I've done, or stumble on my website and you're like, oh, that's Rich, she's talking to people about divorce. Yeah, I am, because when I went through it, I stumbled, I fell on my face, I did things I wasn't proud of, I hurt feelings, but I stood back up and I learned that's not the way that you should be. um, and that's hard. That's hard when you admit things, because people will be like, oh, see, she admitted to that thing we heard. No, because a lot of the things that were said, a lot of the things that continue to be said are absolutely inaccurate. But one thing I tell my clients is you have to focus on you and your healing and your forgiveness and your own release. And that's not wrapped up in what other people say, other people's narratives, what other people think they know. Whether you're from a small town, a huge city, whoever thinks they know what they think they know, their sin is just shaped differently. But you can't walk your path worried about what they're going to do and how they're going to take it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So that wraps up today's episode. That was
Thanks
so
for coming to my
powerful.
TED
Oh my
Talk.
gosh. That was right. That was so good. So many like one-liners. Oh my gosh. I think one of the most powerful things that any human can learn is I hope we can get to a place in our life that we can say, like, if you think you know me, you don't. Like, if you knew me back
Yes.
then, you don't know me
Yes.
now, because that indicates growth. It indicates
Yes.
work, heart work,
Yes.
healing. And I think we can also all, as an adult, look back at the things we've done as a child or a teen, mind you, not even with a fully developed brain, and think, what the hell was
Oh,
I thinking?
absolutely.
Why did I do
Yes.
that? And feel remorseful over that. And I wonder, are there some of these things where you can be like, hey, Sally, maybe we can chat? Are there things to that level where would that help you release part of that elephant in the room if you were to be like, hey, Sally, actually, I want to talk to you about something?
Well, okay. So the Sallys that would work well with, I have already done that. So,
Perfect.
yes. So to answer your question, yes. The Sallys that's not possible with, those are the ones where I basically just did like a universal I'm sorry and a changed
Yeah.
behavior. And that's my big
Mhm.
piece is you can say you're sorry over and over and over, but if you're not going to change your behavior, if you're not going to own your shit, it's useless.
Doesn't
It's
matter.
useless.
Mhm.
So, and two things that kind of came up for me with what you just said is, if you show remorse for the things that you have done to people, then you're exhibiting real growth. If you're
Mhm.
exhibiting judgment over someone's remorse, over someone's growth, you haven't grown yet.
I love
And the
that.
second part of it that I think is, and I work on it every day. I'm sitting here saying this like I've mastered this ability. I have so not. But if anyone who can listen to anyone who's in my position or their own position and laugh at what they're saying and judge what they're saying, does not know the version of you that exists now. They don't. And there's a reason that they don't.
Yep.
You haven't let them in. They haven't grown enough. They're just not that part of your life anymore. But it's so odd to me how people can just take one piece of a story or little bits and pieces that they hear and judge other people for it. without even
Mm-hmm.
having a conversation with them, without even
Yeah.
knowing the story. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that came up for me is, I mean, obviously I have a whole list of things I know that have been said, and then I have my list of things that I know I did do, and they don't match.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild the amount of validation we try to get from people. And it's
Oh,
wild why we
yes.
let it
Mm-hmm.
bother us. So like I had this example that came to mind when I was obviously taking notes and preparing for this because I'm type A. A few months ago, I ran into a person that I used to know. We weren't great friends, but I mean, we'd hung out. We, had been around each other in different settings. And when she walked into the place I was in, I sort of nod smiled. Like I wasn't like, hey, girl, but I smiled. And she looked at me as if I was a leper. And like she didn't even know who I was. And she went and sat with whoever she was there with. And, you can tell, you can see vibe changes, when someone is saying something.
You can read the
Yeah.
energy.
And
Yeah.
the energy was absolute judgment. And it was like, I haven't talked to that person in probably 10 years. You have no idea who I am now. And you are judging things I did when I was in my 20s, teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I have found, especially with my clients and maybe even a little bit myself, the people who judge your skeletons oftentimes have bigger skeletons in their closet that they refuse to address. And I'm going to tell you what, girl,
Mm-hmm.
I sit with my skeletons every day. I'm on a first name basis with them. And my clients always get that backwards. They're like, I thought you said don't look in the rear view. And I'm like, I'm not looking in the rear view. But if I forget those skeletons, if I forget those things that I did that were maybe not the best choices as a teen, as a newly married person, as someone who hurt people's feelings, as a daughter, a sister, whatever, then I'm more likely to not exhibit that changed behavior. So why wouldn't I sit with them? Why wouldn't I acknowledge it?
Yeah, that's a part of healing so many people want to
Yes.
avoid or
Yes.
ignore. But honestly, it's the sitting with,
Yes.
accepting. The human experience is made up of so many complex emotions and thoughts, and two things can be true at once. And you can want to go to the gym and also want to sit and eat Cheetos and watch American Idol. Like those two things can be true, and it's because we are complex. And I also want to say, what I think it was Brene Brown, where she was talking about like when you're in the arena, you're going to have the people in the stands saying all of the things, but you still have to keep showing up. And that's what you're doing today.
Yes. Yes.
Despite the fears, despite honestly, you could have done everything right as a child and as a young adult, and people would still have shit
Oh,
to say.
absolutely. And it usually comes from a
So,
place of their own wounds, their own
yes.
unhealed wounds, unhealed growth, not growth. It oftentimes comes from their own internal narrative, and it really ain't got nothing to do with you.
Mhm. So there's the part where we have to own our shit, and there's the part where we have to let go of the shit that ain't
Yes.
ours.
Yes.
And I love that we're discussing this because I feel like it's going to it's going to mesh well with our heart to heart today. So, now that you have bared your soul.
That was uncomfortable, just in case anybody wants to know. I'm sweating over here a little bit.
Oh my gosh, I'm here for the sweat. I'm here for excited sweat and nervous sweat. I'm here for it. So, before we dive into all of the meaningful things that we're going to talk about, I'm going to pull some of what you just shared too once we dive in. I would love for you to share a little bit more about your journey and what has led you to the path you're on today.
Okay. So my journey into coaching, parallel parenting, co-parenting, was one that was born out of trying to turn a pain into purpose, trying to heal my own self. So I've been I'm divorced. I'm now remarried. I we had, if you want to call it an amicable-ish divorce, I don't think any divorces are actually amicable, but we didn't dive into family court and battle it out or anything like that. And if you're new to the whole family court realm, stay tuned, buckle up, because I'm going to give you some insight into what a corrupt circus that is. But we didn't do any of that. But obviously the divorce itself was still traumatizing. I don't think anybody gets married to get a divorce. I don't think anybody that falls in love as young as we did decides one day just overnight, I don't want this anymore. And there's a lot of fear, judgment, shame, embarrassment that comes along with a divorce. So I had that kind of going on all on my own. And then, when you add in getting a divorce in a small town, there was a lot of activities I wasn't aware I was taking part in. Let's just put it that way.
Oh,
I was living a good life, apparently. Like, I could have been doing half of those fun things. Like, wow, okay. But, then at getting remarried and entering a blended family, and then becoming a part of a custody battle that spanned, I don't even know that you could technically say it's over. Been at least 6 years worth of fighting in family court. And I realized just how broken our family court system is. The tactics that can be used are despicable and brutal. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a word made in the English language bad enough to describe some of the things that are accepted in family court. And going through that, paying the money, putting all of the energy to it, seeing the trauma that it was causing, not just us, but, other people that were in the courtroom when we were there, things like that, just made me realize this has to change. Like, how are you doing this to kids? Because that's who really struggles the most through the family court system. And it was, how do we fix this? Well, obviously you can become an attorney. I have lots of student loan debt already. So the thought of going back to law school was like, nah. And I don't, you can't, the family court system is not one you can fight from within. Unfortunately, it's a $1 billion business. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I think I didn't understand that. I thought family court is there to be fair for the child. And you go in there and they make decisions that are the best interest of the family. And when I tell you wrong, naive, I just feel stupid, just plain stupid, that I didn't realize that it was such a bad place to take your family. And I realized I can't fight it from within. I don't want to pay to become an attorney. So, I just kind of started Googling, how can I help people? And I came across coaching. So I went through a certification course for divorce coaching, and then a conflict certification course, and then took some co-parenting classes, took a paralegal course, and I'm now in alternative dispute resolution courses to become certified in that as well. And basically just with the goal to try to keep people out of family court. And I know from my co-survivor personal experience, that's not always going to be an option. Possible. Yeah, you're going to have a lawyer and have to go to court. But if I can help, and the clients I have, I help them try to stay out of courts. Parallel parent instead of co-parent. Keep your boundaries, keep your peace. Because honestly, and this is merch. I need to put this on merch. High conflict is increased billable hours. The more conflict, the more court, the more filings, the more money. And people don't understand that, and they get caught up in this emotional chaos. And, when we make decisions from a place of emotion, they're not great decisions most of the time. So it's a lot of conflict that ends up driving them into family court. So I really work hard to try to keep people out of there, because at the end of the day, that's not a place for kids.
In short, do you feel like you have turned your pain into a purpose? Do you feel like you can put a check mark on that as successful?
Yes. Yes.
I think so too. I can tell, I can feel, we're talking about feeling energy. And when you show up online, I just feel that. It's hard to ignore. So my answer would be yes too for you.
Yeah, I have. And that's actually recent. If you'd have probably asked me 8-9 months ago, I probably would have said, I don't really know yet. Not really sure.
There's a
Yeah.
difference. Just in how, for those of you who are listening, Courtney and I actually haven't met in person yet, but was it two
Two.
2 years ago we started
Yeah, I think
chatting?
so. Right about two.
I think so. Yeah, and even just from then to now, there is this like newfound richness. I think that's the word of
Yeah.
the episode today. There's just this new energy. I feel like you're totally aligned. I can feel it.
I feel it too. I mean, and obviously there are days that I
Mhm.
stumble with it too. But I realized that the amount of judgment I was holding for myself. So kind of what we were
Mm,
talking about in the beginning,
mm, yes.
the judgment of myself, the shame, the fear, the guilt, the doubt, all of it that I was holding for myself, along with the anger that I held. Because I mean, I'm going to be honest, the anger that I have held for the people around us in this situation has just it started to turn who I was. Honestly, I didn't want to be around myself. So I didn't know why anybody else would want to be
Mm,
around me. The negativity and
yeah.
just I can see how easily that can happen to people who are in this situation, the resentment, the bitterness. And I don't want anyone else to feel like I did. So I finally just made the choice of I'm going to see reality as it is. And I'm going to stop looking at it like I didn't do anything wrong. They did everything wrong. And just start realizing people can only show up to their level of healed and their level of knowledge and their level of understanding. It's just that simple.
Mhm. Mhm.
You are over there dancing,
Ugh,
and I love it.
I know. Oh, I just yes, all of that.
And
So powerful.
honestly, I think too that something that has helped me recently is words from so when I first started the business and had clients, obviously it was the very beginning for them, it was the very beginning for me, and I've had several who are transitioning kind of towards the end of their journey. We're not working together weekly anymore. We're kind of out of that acute phase, and they've come back to
Mhm.
me and given me little nuggets of the way you helped me, the way that I felt like I wasn't alone, I wasn't isolated. And I think one of the biggest ones is a family member, and I'll just leave it at that. A family member recently told me that what I am doing is admirable, and that it
No.
meant a lot to this person, that I was taking the pain from the family and turning it into a purpose for other people. And girl, snot bubbles. It was all the snot bubbles when this particular
Snot
person said it,
bubbles.
because the person that said it is, just like in that inner circle, like just their opinion
Mhm.
just means so very much to me. And to hear that, it was yes, despite whatever judgment, whatever giggles, whatever I get from anyone who doesn't understand what I'm doing, that's on them. That speaks volumes to what they
Mhm.
understand in their character, not what I'm trying to do with this. So
Mhm.
it shifted. It
Yeah.
shifted my perspective. It shifted the way I was showing up online. It shifted how I wanted to be here. So when I first started this journey, it was really helping people with the acute phase of divorce. So
Mhm.
they first getting an attorney, they were in court all the time, and it was really trying to talk to them about the filings, the paperwork, that kind of thing. And I realized in that moment, I can't really help with that. If you already have an attorney, you
Yeah.
have to listen to them. And so I finally said, you know what? They're making decisions from this just place of shame. And we got to
Mhm.
stop that. So I started to transition more into the divorce recovery piece, co parenting,
Yeah.
parallel parenting, healing, deactivating your nervous system, all of those things. And a lot of people think, well, I can't focus on any of that until my divorce is final. Mm-mm. No, 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 no. You need to focus on that on day one, because every decision you make from day one, from the day you file, from the day you move out, from the way you even verbalize it to your spouse, you need to be showing up as a healed self or healing self. Because if you don't,
Mhm.
you are going to fan the flames. You are going to have a lot of conflict. And I remember times talking to my ex-husband, either on the phone or text messages, where I was reacting to him rather than responding to him, and I triggered the fight. Now, don't get me wrong. If he
Mhm.
listens to this, he'll laugh, but he triggered a few too. But it was because he was doing the same. He was reacting rather than responding. And it
Mm-hmm.
was because it was coming from that place of being unhealed, being activated. I don't like the word triggered most of the time. I think it's overused. So I use more activated. And if you can
Mm-hmm.
get out of that mindset, at least some, not that it's possible to be totally healed right away, but then you start making better decisions.
I agree. I also want to touch on something that you have mentioned a few times is that you're coming on here not from a perfect place. Um, and you tell your clients that as well. For those that are listening, if there's something you feel called to do, and this is where I feel like you are, Courtney, you only have to be one step ahead of someone that you want to
Oh,
help.
absolutely.
You don't have to have the steps or the path perfected. You just have to be one step ahead and have the heart to bring people along with you. And I think that's what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't have to be an expert at it. You just have to have a level of empathy for it. I mean, my clients don't expect me to be an expert at everything.
Yeah.
And, they just want, especially in this realm, and if you've never gotten a divorce before or even ended a long-term relationship. So I even have clients who they were never married. It was just they lived together for 10 years. So even at the end of
Yeah.
any kind of a relationship, you feel alone and you feel embarrassed and you feel shameful. And why wasn't I good enough? Why didn't I do enough? No matter what the ending circumstances are, those are common feelings for most people. And just having someone that can show up with them is super important. So, I mean, I had a great support
Holding that
system.
space for them.
Yes, they need that space. And
Mhm.
even if you have a great support system, sometimes those people that are in your support system, they don't know what it's like. They've either not divorced or
Yep.
their divorce wasn't difficult or whatever, just fill in the blank. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, they're there and they hug you and they take you out for drinks and they go on girls' trips and whatever. But you need that person that can show up and say, you know what? I've walked this path. Here's where I misstepped. Don't misstep behind me.
Mhm.
And that changes
And
everything.
yeah. No, having the right kind of space. I love that you even pointed out there are different types of support.
Absolutely.
And before I forget, I have to know the
Yeah.
difference between co-parenting and parallel parenting. What is the
Okay.
difference?
Co-parenting is where you're making co-decisions. So you're lots of communication,
Oh.
what goes in one house goes in the other. And then parallel parenting is kind of what it sounds. You're parallel to each other. You mind your
Mhm.
house and that person minds their house.
So
It
good.
really decreases a lot of extra communication. And don't get me wrong, there will be people, I had plenty of people do it. They're like, oh my God, I could never parallel parent. I could never do that. My baby means too much to me. Okay, number one, judgy Judy. Let's not judge what let's not judge what other people do. But number two, if you can't fathom doing parallel parenting, you are not in a high conflict situation. Yeah.
That's a good distinguishing
And I
thing to think
I will
about.
die on that hill. I will. You are not. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of catchphrases out there in social media nowadays. With well, everybody should co-parent and do it this puzzle or the cookie cutter way. There's a picture that's been floating around. Lots of people that I follow on the internet share it with me, but it's a picture of they're on a field and it's the back of like a stepmom, a dad, the kid, a mom, and the
Mhm.
stepdad, and they all have like stepdad,
Okay, I
stepmom,
gotcha.
mom, dad on the back of their jerseys, and they're standing there
Yeah.
with this little child. That's great. If that works for you, I applaud you to the nth degree. But that does not work for everybody. There are some people who can't
Mhm.
even attend the same social gathering, the same sporting
Yeah.
event, let alone stand side by side in matchy matchy jerseys. And you've got
Yep.
so many people out there that give you the opinion of, well, if you can't do that, you're a failure as a parent. No, you're not. No, you are not. And the courts do it a lot. So the courts really push co-parenting because in some cases with
Yep.
high conflict, the more you try to co-parent, the more you're met with resistance, the more you're filing in court, the more money you're spending. And they'll let that go on for years and years and years. And then finally somebody in court be like, why don't y'all try parallel parenting? Why didn't we do that to
Oh, what
begin
is
with?
that?
Like,
What is
my
that?
God.
Why
Yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I really try to talk to people about doing it. So, and also another catchphrase, I got off on a tangent, but high conflict is another catchy phrase. A lot of people are not in high conflict. And actually, where I got my conflict certification, the Divorce Coaches Academy, the owner of that, she says it the best. You can be in increasing conflict, but you are not always
Mm.
in high conflict. So I get clients all the time that'll call me and be like, I'm in a high conflict divorce. Okay, well, tell me a little bit about it. And it's like, that's not what we mean. Like, that's not high conflict. You have,
Do you want to share what it
yeah,
means? Can you share the distinguishing
sure.
things?
So when you have increasing conflict, you have the potential for getting to high conflict, obviously, but you have things you disagree on. Maybe, your kiddo's bedtime is 7 at your house and it's 9 at the other house, and that just fires you up that the other parent doesn't put your
Gotcha.
kid to bed on time, or they feed them things that you think they shouldn't feed them, or whatever. That can cause increasing levels of conflict. And that is sometimes fairly normal. And you're divorcing this person. You clearly do not get along. That is going to happen. But then when you switch over to high conflict, these are the people where false allegations, parental alienation, post separation abuse, these are where these things start coming in. And you literally
Mm-hmm.
cannot communicate with this person because everything you say is met with threats. It's met with conflict. It's met with arguing. It's never going to get you anywhere. And no matter if you fire off a 15 paragraph email with, APA citations at the end of it, you're not changing this person. You're not changing them. A lot of
Yeah.
times with your high conflict personalities, they're disordered people. I think narcissist is also another one of those hot button words that people use way too much. Not as many people as you think are actually clinically diagnosed with narcissism.
Yeah.
Every
They can have the traits, but not have the
bingo,
disorder.
bingo. And so many people
Yeah.
are like, oh, my ex is a narcissist. No, he's probably just a selfish douche canoe. Like, it's okay not to give this like some kind of a medical diagnosis, but people will go there and say, well, this is, what this person has. It doesn't have to be narcissism. I mean, you can have borderline personality disorder, histrionic disorder. You can just really be a morally impaired human and just be disordered. But when you're dealing with
Mm-hmm.
that, that's a high conflict. It's not just arguments. You're going to have married people have arguments. Divorced people are going to have a little bit more. And then when you get into that high conflict realm, you're really dealing with those types of tactics that are utilized to gain the upper hand, gain control, gain custody. And well, really all of it boils down to gaining a sense of control.
Yeah. Having the power.
Yes.
I would imagine in either scenario, whether it's increasing conflict or high conflict, there are going to be moments where people are going to be reactive, can put them in fight or flight. How can people become more aware of their own reactive responses in order to start effectively managing these situations?
That's a great question. It's a multifaceted answer, but it starts with own your shit. Own it. Own your response. Don't, when you feel yourself reacting or getting ready to react or feeling activated or triggered, whatever word resonates with you, you know that that's how you're feeling. So your fight or flight response is going to make your heart rate go up, your blood pressure go up, you could get dizzy, nauseated, sweaty, whatever. You know when you're fixing to react.
Fixing.
I try to be so much better with that.
No, I love
You know
it.
when
I
you're
love
getting ready to
it.
react, and that's when you have to intentionally stop yourself and do so insert fill in the blank, whatever works for you. So I have multiple strategies that I work with clients with, and that can be anything from blowing on a coffee straw, sticking their face in a freezer. If you're one of those people that gets in those ice baths and does that, I can't do it. I can't handle it. But if you're one of those people, meditate, journal, go for a run, cut on a TV show, whatever fill in the blank works for you. You activate that, do it, and then answer later. So you practice a pause and
Okay.
fill the pause with something that is going to deactivate you. And that, like I said, can be anything that works for you. It's not one size fits all, obviously, because I'm not getting in a water bath, an ice bath. I'm not meditating. I can't cut my brain off long enough. I typically journal. I will journal my feelings, at a fast and furious rate, pen to paper, get my anger out there, and then I'll answer later. So then you're more apt to be responsive with a clear, fresh mindset than reactive to whatever it is. And they could very well be trying to control you. They could very well be pushing every button that you have. But you have to ask yourself, is what I want to say going to change them? If the answer is no, don't waste your time sending a 5-paragraph email because it isn't going to change anything. Leave it alone. Answer only what needs to be answered is the biggest thing. And then the second piece of advice that I usually give people that are in a divorce is set up something, an email, a specific email. If you're court ordered to use an app, obviously use the app. A second phone line, a second phone number, a burner phone, like whatever. And have that be your primary mode of communication with that person. And then that way you set up when you check it. So if you have a specific email that everything co-parenting or parallel parenting goes to, then on Tuesdays and Thursday nights at 9, that's when you check it. And before you sit down to check it, you do whatever that fill in the blank activity is. Stick your face in a freezer,
so good.
Eat ice cream, whatever, deactivates you. You have the power to answer it. And then I tell them, close it. Don't answer right then. Close it. Give yourself some time to think it through. And then we always go through exercises where I teach them how to filter the message. Does it have a question? Does it have a question that needs answering? If the answer to that is no, there's no real questions in there, there's nothing I really need to answer, it's okay to not respond. Not everything requires a response. And sometimes those high conflict people, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for you to blow up.
A reaction.
They want that.
So
they feed off of that reaction.
So, pulling from what you're saying, pause, take a breath, insert your thing, deactivate, and then only respond if you need to.
Yes. And I have people all the time.
And that is so much easier said than done, right? Yes. Like when you're in it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like angering me. I've got to respond right now. Another thing that you said, yes. And I want to get into that too, if you're comfortable sharing. Another thing you said is, I can't even remember how you worded it, but my takeaway was, we're not avoiding the anger. We're not like throwing the phone, or you can if you want. We're not throwing the phone across and then never responding to the person ever again. You're just putting the phone down, get your anger out, feel the things. You can journal, you can get in the ice bath like Chase. Don't get it. But, and then if you need to respond, you can respond with a clear mindset.
Yes.
So, Courtney, are you comfortable sharing a little bit about your personal story?
Parts of it, yes.
Perfect.
There are other parts that are not mine to share. So some of those parts are still pretty traumatic. So, but in terms of this piece of it, there have been so many times that I've gotten a text or an email, or, my husband's gotten a text or an email from his other parent, and you read it from this place of hurt, this place of anger. And then really what happens is it's your body's fight or flight response. So our bodies are great. They're miraculous things that our body can do. But I'm gonna tell you what, our bodies cannot tell the difference between a bear and our ex. They can't. They just don't know. So if you feel activated, your body's like, that's a bear. We need to run. We need to safety. So if you're reacting to your ex, your body's like, safety, I need safety. So our first thought is respond quickly, stop it. That's what you think. That's what your body is being very silly, and is like, the best way to do this is to answer, and then it's over, and then I'll feel safe again. What your body doesn't take into account is the other person, because that other person was looking for that reaction. So they're going to come back with something equally as whatever egregious, and then you're going to have to respond again, and they're going to come back again, and you're going to respond again. So then you're just going to be
It's a
Yeah, you're going
cycle.
to be in and out of fight or flight. And so I noticed that a few years ago that was how I was starting. Like that was just where I was all the time, was fight or flight. When my husband's phone would ding, my heart rate would go up because it was,
Mm-hmm.
here we go again. Here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what it was meant to do, honestly. But then when you feed it, so it's almost like a car with gas. If you keep giving that person gas, they're going to keep running. If you take the gas away, eventually they will stop. Sometimes with some high conflict parents, it takes years, but they do stop. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to take away that gas. But in order to do that, you have to recognize what are your triggers or activations, and how do you kind of take a step back away from it and let your body know it's just a message. It's just a ding. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
notification on a phone. You're fine. Let yourself feel fine and then show up. And I think the second piece to that is you don't have to show up to every battle you're invited to.
Ooh. You are full of these one-liners. Like you're going to have a full merch shop
I love
here.
these one-liners, and I can't take credit for all of them. Obviously, I use the ones that resonate the most with me, but that was one. And honestly, the one where not everything requires a response, my husband takes credit for that one. He
Mm-hmm.
has said that to me so
Yeah,
many times. And I
it's a
kept
good
running
one.
into the brick wall of, but if I respond just this way, it'll make it better.
It'll fix
It's not
it.
going to fix it.
Yeah. Let's say someone is listening, they're in the situation, they're doing good, taking the pause, filling in the blank with something that helps them deactivate. They're responding without a bunch of emotion. They're handling
Mhm.
that. There's still this element of forgiveness.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that? What do you coach your clients on the element of forgiveness, this big, scary, terrible idea?
It is a big scary, and it's a pain point for a lot of people. It's a unpopular
Mm-hmm.
opinion for some people. So what I usually start off with clients is forgiveness is for you, release is for the other person. Because so many people will come
Mm.
in
Expand on
the
that.
release part.
Yeah.
Okay. So forgiveness is like a warm hug that you give yourself because you need it. Like a cozy,
Mm-hmm.
warm hug that you need to just let go of what you did. That's what forgiveness is. Release is for the other person. You are releasing the burden that they are bearing upon you with their poor choices.
Mm.
It is not your job to fix other people. Whether you think, oh, well, they're at fault for the end of the marriage, or they're at fault for this, that, or the other, that's not your job to fix. Release it.
Yeah.
Because I have so many clients that come to me and they're like, you want me to forgive that dude? You want me to forgive her for what she did? I could never. And as someone who has been through things that are 1,000 times unforgivable, I get it. I do. But that forgiveness ain't about the person that hurt you. It's about you. It's about you releasing that burden that is in your head. I mean, there's that, whatever, the thing on, I'm sure it's a meme or something, but it's like, don't let them live rent free in your head. Or are you doing that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's the same. It's not necessary. You're not forgiving what they did. You're not forgiving their actions. You're forgiving yourself for whatever part you may or may not have owned, and you are releasing the burden that they are caught. You're allowing yourself to bear that burden of someone else's choices. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think to paraphrase that, put this on a t-shirt too. You're not justifying their actions. Like you said, you're releasing that burden.
Yeah.
So powerful. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. I just had to have you expand on that because it was
No,
so
no,
good.
that's fine. And it really came from a place of people coming at me with forgiveness posts of, how can you possibly say I should forgive, my child's mother or my child's father for X, Y, and Z? And it's like, that's where you're going wrong right there is the for. It's not for them. It's for you. And I'm not saying you should write them a letter or send them a card or go give them a hug. I'm just saying, let go of what happened. Know the reality for what it is in the moment. The reality is they hurt you. The reality is you may have done something to hurt them. No one is perfect. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that there are situations where there is, abuse, actual abuse. There's, actual year-long infidelity, like years along. I understand that. And I understand that those are unforgivable things. But again, it's not about that person. It's about releasing what it's doing to you, because the more you hold on to that anger, the more you hold on to the burden that it's putting on you, you're never going to be able to heal. You're never going to be able to get better. It's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, and this might be a difficult question, do you have an example of how someone could be, and I say this because, when I get to talking with my therapist, I'm like, okay, but ow, I just like, for those of y'all not watching, I just like hit myself in the head. I'm like, but like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So do you have an example of how someone can very literally start the process of forgiveness? Because it definitely, your internal experience doesn't really match the action of forgiveness.
Yeah.
That is a loaded question.
It is. And I actually have an answer.
You're welcome.
It's a weird one. So like, you want to know what action you can do to kick off the forgiveness phase. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
It's weird. And I've had clients, mostly my male clients, are like, you want me to do what now? But they do it. And then they're like, okay, all right, I'm on board. So I want my clients, or anybody who's listening who wants to kick this off, is to go and grab you a piece of paper. Now, if you want to get real extra, go buy you a cute little journal that makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. I have 50 of them, so I know what joy that brings to do. But get you a piece of paper, get you a pen, and then sit down with, I don't care, water, wine, ice cream, pizza, something, quiet space, no one around you, judgment-free space, whatever it looks like for you. And I want you to write a letter to the person you need to forgive. And if that is 4 different letters, if that's a letter, you need to do what, if it's a letter to yourself because you want to forgive yourself, you write it. And I want you to write, dear so-and-so, dear Courtney, like, I want you to write it as if you're sending it to them. This is what you did. This is what happened. This is how I felt. This is how I showed up, my perspective. I want you to write all that down. And it doesn't have to be grammatically correct. You can, cuss, yell, holler, cry. It's not all over the paper. I don't care what you do with it, but just let it out as if you want them to hear your soul. You want them to hear all of the things. Even if you're not justified, write it down anyway. And then I want you to put it in an envelope. And I want you to put it away for an undetermined amount of time, however long that is for you. For me, it was about 2.5 years. And then I want you to burn it. I want you to literally, and don't burn your house down. Be very careful. Can't encourage people to play with.
Disclaimer.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
Right? Like, be careful if you're using matches here, people. But burn it and let it go. That's where the release came in. The beyond the forgiveness part, the release part is release it to the universe. You're not releasing the person from culpability. You're not doing that. You're not condoning what they did. You're not promoting what they did. But are you really going to change what they did? Are you really going to change the trajectory of that person? Are you really going to change their mindset? Because most of the time, the answer to that is no. You can't change other people. And your forgiveness and your release should not be wrapped up in other people.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people in relationships cling to this hope for a possibility of change.
Yes.
And that we could be the catalyst for that change. And we could go into a whole another episode about boundary setting in that regard. Yeah, I feel like, I don't know why I feel called to share this, but even forgiving yourself for like clinging to that hope for the possibility of change that keeps you stuck
Absolutely
in an unhealthy marriage. Like, even it wasn't a marriage, but past relationships that were emotionally and physically abusive, but that hope, that faith, the potential, all of those things were there. I had to forgive myself.
Absolutely.
Because for so long it was like, how could you be so stupid? Like, you saw that it was unhealthy. So I love that you even included a letter to yourself, because I feel like someone listening needs to hear that.
Yes. And even saying, because people will say, like with what you just said, the natural human response to that is, oh, Sharon, you didn't do anything wrong. Why would you feel that way? They hurt you. Yes, but then that's telling your brain that you're wrong. Your emotions are not wrong. They're not.
They're never wrong. No matter what someone has done, what you have done, the feelings across the board for you, for that other person are valid. The
Yes.
feelings are always valid.
Yes.
Your behaviors might suck.
Your feelings come from your path, from your wounds, from your narrative, from your journey. How can I invalidate your journey? So that's why I tell my clients, write it to yourself and hire a coach. And it doesn't have to be me. Like, I probably should be a lot better with marketing than I am, but like, I don't sell myself. If you want to find a different coach, and I have people all the time that come to me and I'm like, I can't help you with that, but here I have a colleague who can. But get somebody who's going to take you out of your own head and help you get to where you need to be. They're not going to be well, why do you feel that way? That's dumb. Or someone who's going to validate bad behavior.
Everything. Yes. You're
perfect. You didn't do anything wrong. That was totally him. That was totally her. No. Don't go to that space.
Get you a realist.
Yes.
Get you a realist.
Give you somebody who's going to tell you what you did wrong. How do you not?
Hold you accountable with love and encouragement.
Yes.
So we're talking about forgiveness. Can you speak to the potential impact that forgiveness can have on someone's well-being and
absolutely
how? Okay. I could just keep asking questions. So
I love your questions though. They're great. Okay. And so far I've had answers to most of them. So if we get to one that we don't,
you're doing amazing.
I feel like I can't answer that.
And for those listening, I like to have organic conversations and kind of just like go with the flow. Right. Of course, I have like a couple like starter questions and I'm like, I definitely want to ask that. So I did not like send Courtney a list of topics. She did not send me things that we had to discuss. This is organic.
Love it.
Continue.
Love it.
Continue.
Okay. So what did you ask me again?
Exactly.
This organic conversation. I forgot.
I love it. Can you speak to the potential impact that forgiveness can have on someone's overall well-being?
Yes, I can. Okay. So this is a bit of a long-winded tangent that I'm going to put out there.
I love it. This is what I'm here for.
Well, because none of these are like yes, no, close-ended cookie cutter answers. They're just not. So the long-term impacts of forgiveness. So when you go through something, and I don't care if it's a divorce, the end of a relationship, whatever, you want emotional justice. That's what you want. You want someone to emotionally validate that what happened to you was bad, that person sucks, and you deserve a tiara because you're a princess for the day. Like, yeah, you just want that. It's what everyone comes to me, and in some form or fashion, even if it's not said as emotional justice, that's what they're craving.
Yeah, the underlying thing.
And I am here to squash everyone who's listening's dreams. Emotional justice doesn't exist. It just doesn't. You're not going to get it by taking them to court. You're not going to get it by trying to destroy them. You're not going to get it from taking their kids from them. You're just not going to get it. You're going to get it from yourself. And that's through forgiveness. Hard. So some of the long-term impacts, so I'm going to kind of like answer this backwards. Some of the long-term impacts of not forgiving someone, so staying drummed up in that activated anger, resentful phase. If you stay in fight or flight, your body cannot accommodate that for long periods of time. You will end up with anxiety, high blood pressure. You can end up with diabetes, autoimmune disorders, things like that. If you have high levels of cortisol from the stress, your body can't maintain that. And so the little personal nugget I'll put in here is, because I stayed in that fight or flight for so long, I am now dealing with a lot of health issues. And a lot of them stem from that chronic stress, the chronic fight or flight. And recognizing that and looking back and saying, okay, well, I did this to my body. So now it's my choice to stop doing this to my body and start making
Mm-hmm.
better choices and start choosing peace and start choosing forgiveness, even if the other person doesn't deserve it, start choosing that for yourself, you'll start to see you're more peaceful. And like we talked about, you see me showing up differently now than I did 2 years
Yeah.
ago. That's why, is because I decided, and I am in no way speaking to just my ex-husband or any but specific person in my life. So I don't want anyone who's listening to this, especially if they know him or know me, to be like, oh my God, she's talking about him. No, I'm not. We had what we had. We divorced. Is what it is. I have no ill intentions, ill thoughts, or anger, resentment still held in that space. I let that go a long time ago. So I'm really just talking about anybody who's ever done this. But for myself, I realized I was the only one. I could either choose to stay in that space and likely become chronically debilitated, or I could
Mm-hmm.
choose to show up peacefully, more calmly. And I noticed that the more I started to do that, the more, so like, you know how people say, hey, you might have been Oprah, that if you negative begets negative, positive vibes come back to you, like that kind of thing. Like what you put out, you get back. Well, if you're putting out anger and resentment and things like that, that's what you're going to attract. If you're putting out forgiveness and release and peace and boundaries, people around you are going to pick up on that, and things in your household are going to be more
Mm-hmm.
peaceful. You're going to show up as a better parent, as a more healed parent. And people come to me all the time and they're like, well, I can't parallel parent. I can't do that to my baby. I have to show up for my baby. I have to make sure that he or she's doing what they need to do for my kiddos. Well, of course you do. You're a parent. Absolutely. But as you're reacting, getting fired up, cussing, yelling, hollering, whatever it is you're doing, spending an hour drafting a 5-paragraph email that you think is just, perfection, really going to change that person? Is it really going to
Mm-hmm.
change how they show up as a parent? That one liner in the bottom of your email is going to be that one thing that's going to make it click for them? No. What you just did is you just put yourself in fight or flight. You made yourself angry, reactive. You took time away from your kid. You took time away from your job, your peace, your friends. And that starts to kind of build up. And once it builds up in your bank, it starts spilling over onto other people. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the long-term impact of your forgiveness is not about them. It's about how you want to show up in your
Yeah.
post-divorce life, your remarried life, your blended family life. Because I got to tell you, you show up as a non-healed version in a new marriage and a blended family, the statistics are already staggering for blended families, but you add that into it, you have a recipe for disaster. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
about you. And like I said, your body can't sustain but for so long. So the quicker you get
Yeah.
to peace, the quicker you can, or forgiveness, the quicker you can get to peace, the better boundaries you can build.
I love that you talked about the health conditions, um, and how stress and all of these things affect our bodies, because our body, they say is our subconscious. It keeps
It does.
score. All of the things that you're not addressing or you're avoiding or staying in the fight or flight, like your body is keeping record. And what a little turd thing to do to keep score, but
It
it
does.
does.
And it comes to collect. It does. And
Man.
I, even with a healthcare background, and I mean, I know what mental health does. I know what stress can do to your body. Even knowing that, I didn't take that into account for a number of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, she keeps score and she comes back and says, yeah, pay up.
Mhm.
And,
Right.
that sometimes you can manage some of those things and sometimes you can't. I mean, anybody who struggles with anxiety or autoimmune disorders or anything like that, I mean, they can take over your life. Well, if they take over your life, they're taking over your spouse's life, your kids' lives. So why not just choose differently? Choose to not let that happen. And, I share my story a little bit more in depth, obviously, with my clients. And I'm like, hey, this is what happened. And sometimes hearing those one-liners or those examples and things like
Mhm.
that is helpful to be like, whoa, okay. And I don't mind being the one that's like, hey, I don't want to end up like her. Like, no, you truly don't. I mean, I'm not even 40. I want to be healthy. And right now, I mean, I'm getting back to it, which is excellent, but I didn't have to choose this path. And I want my clients to
Yeah.
choose, like I said in the beginning, where I messed up, don't follow me.
The word choose has come up a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, but how do you choose? And I feel like the answer is simple. It's a
It's
practice.
intentional.
Yeah, it's an intentional practice and it's not going to be
Mm-mm.
easy. And sometimes you might find yourself not catching yourself reacting until like you're at the tail end of it and you're like, holy shit, I've been super reactive and responsive in this way. Even just that, catching yourself at the tail end of a reactive episode or whatever, like that is starting the process of making a choice.
Well, because you learn for next time. That's the best way
Mhm.
to learn, is to fall down and fail. It's not by somebody else telling you. It's not by reading a self-help book, although I do recommend a lot of them. It's really
Mhm.
failing. And then, well, why did I fail? What happened? What
Yep.
made me do this? And then you choose, there's that word again, you choose to do better next time. And I mean, don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
I reposted it the other day, but I think it was a few months ago, maybe. I had posted the original one, and I said, I cussed out my co-parent yesterday, and then I put a long blurb about why. I still fall, I still fail when you're dealing with a divorce. And so the other thing that I talk to clients about a lot too, and this is a hard one that would probably have to be like a whole nother episode to talk about, but we forget that divorce is actually number 2 on the list of highest stressors, second
Mm.
only to death of
Yeah.
a child. So,
Jeez.
and when you think about stressors, the top stressors, a lot of them have to do with death of a child, death of a spouse, death of a
Mhm.
parent. And we allow ourselves so much grace when someone dies. Why do we not allow ourselves that same level of grace when our relationship dies or our marriage dies?
Yep. It's a
It
loss.
is. And we don't give ourselves the space, the grace to step back and say, and sometimes it's our situation that doesn't give, I mean, if you have children, you're still co-parenting. You are co or parallel parenting with someone you are actively trying to heal from. And that's where it's laughable when
Mhm.
the courts are like, oh, just co-parent. It's like, dude, if I could do that, we wouldn't have gotten a divorce. Like, you can't force me into a corner with this person. But we're trying to heal from them, and we don't give ourselves the same grace. And the reality is, I don't know how familiar some of the listeners are, they can Google it, but the 5 stages of death and dying. I mean, you go from
Mhm.
denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance, and it's not a linear process. You vacillate. I mean, you can go from anger one day to bargaining the next to depression the next. And the divorce is the same. And then there can be years from now, you remember that person and you re-vacillate through those phases. Now, obviously, it's not quite as large and, acute and as bad as it was in the beginning when you first lost that person, but you're still going to go back through it at triggered
Yep.
or activated memories. Well, why are we not giving ourselves that same grace when it comes to divorce? And if you're,
I love
trying
that.
to,
That's beautiful.
like when you're trying to manage life while somebody passes away, life is still going. So parenting is absolutely still going to go on when you're going through a divorce.
Mhm.
But if you don't give yourself grace to feel those different stages, you're just going to stay stuck. And your body can't stay
Mhm.
stuck. Your kids shouldn't have to stay stuck. And that's really the biggest thing. Usually, I use kids against their parents all the time when I do client calls, because like, do you really want this for your child? Put them in the center of
Yeah.
what you're doing. If you can't physically muster, so if somebody's listening and they're like, well, how do I choose? How do I do this? How do I show up? Put your child at the center of your decision. You probably do anyway if you're a parent. Put your child at the center of
Mhm.
it and think about what you would want for them. Think about what you would tell
Yeah.
them. If they're grown and married and have their own kids and are going through a divorce, what advice would you give them? Would you tell them to be graceful with themselves, or would you tell them to argue till the cows come home? Which one would you do? Take your own advice
This is
that you'd give
beautiful.
to a child.
Mhm. That's powerful. What would you say is one thing that you want our listeners to walk away knowing after listening to today's episode?
That it's okay. It's going to be okay. even when it doesn't feel like it's going to be okay and it feels heavy and you feel judged, you feel laughed at, you feel shameful, you feel less than, it's going to be okay. And I know that sounds so simple, just those few little words, but I wish somebody had said that to me in the beginning. Because when you're lost in that dark space and you don't see a way out of it, you think this is life, this is the way this is going to remain, I'm going to stay in this. You can make the choice not to, and you can choose to be okay.
That's the type of hope we can cling to.
Yes, because it will be. And I mean, like I said, we faced some dark times. We were in court a lot for things we shouldn't have been in court for. If you know anything about me personally or from here, I'm sure you've heard about it, but you know, there are spaces that I don't know that I'll ever really be able to revisit because they were so dark and they were so heavy and they were so judged, even to this day. And it would have been nice if somebody had just said, this will end. You will rise. Mm-hmm. You will come out of this. Mm. But you have to make the choice to do that. Because, I mean, I tell you, you can, high road's a lonely place to be. You can choose to take the gutter, but if you choose to take the gutter, you're going to stay there. And then long-term impacts of that are not where you want to be. So you have to choose to be okay. You have to understand it's going to be okay. And you have to put in the work to make it okay. Get your team together.
Yeah. Well, how can people connect with you?
Well, they can visit my website. It is www.drcourtneycoaching.com. My email address, my phone number, all of that's on there. And then they can connect to my Instagram from there as well. Just a small announcement. It'll come out more towards the end of this month, but some of the name changes and things are coming. So I have decided to branch out a little bit away from the Dr. Courtney coaching part and just to navigating all things divorce. So new announcement.
That's exciting.
Yes, I'm super excited about it. Some new things I'm going to offer clients, some new ways to heal, things like that. So I'm super excited.
I'm so excited for you. Totally in alignment, and all of your insights today were powerful. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you. I hope this has been healing for the people listening. Obviously, that I really hope that. But this has also been healing for me. So I am forever appreciative, which I tell you that all the time, Sharon. I'm forever appreciative for you as a human.
I know. We're like,
yes,
all the hearts.
We are. So I thank you.